As if they don't have too much on their plates. The Kings of Combat Sports Podcast.
Neal.
And wait, they'll talk about the things they did that day. They'll analyze the work of Triple H. Rewind-A-SmackDown. 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 Rewind-A-SmackDown.
And welcome to all of our free listeners over on YouTube or on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, trying to think of Overcast, Stitcher. I don't think exists anymore. Again, all wherever you're listening to this, can and string. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the free side of the show. We are here to talk about a taped edition of SmackDown from London, England. That was recorded over on Tuesday. So, Neal, I don't want to call this a lame duck edition of the show, but I mean, certainly these tape shows especially have a less of a sort of like energy to them, especially when like, not to say spoilers affect a whole lot, but I mean, yes, spoilers were readily available. And that, I don't know, like nothing newsworthy, happens on these shows. So that is the sort of warning of like what we will be talking about here. Did you read spoilers and did it change perhaps your appetite at all for tonight's edition?
I did. More accurately, I didn't avoid them. So I saw plenty, in just on social media of people in attendance footage. I believe this entire show somehow got pirated and put onto peer-to-peer services. I don't know quite how the satellite
anybody
feed
send
was
me
intercepted.
a copy? We could have done the show way back days ago.
I know. I only discovered this earlier today, but an interesting one. But I would go as far to say this was a lame duck episode of SmackDown. I'm afraid.
But this review will not be lame duck, okay? Because we are on the one hand maybe lamenting, like not the most exciting edition of SmackDown. On the other hand, we are celebrating the end, at least for now, of 3-hour SmackDowns. And you can even suggest that like last week was sort of the end of the 3-hour SmackDowns, because you turn on Netflix for this pre-taped edition of the show, and at least for me in Canada, not sure about you, Neal, a total runtime of 2 hours, which was lovely to see.
Yes, same here. At 1 a.m. local time, 8 p.m. Eastern time, this appeared on Netflix with the 2-hour runtime, and complete with still stuff that you could skip, the sort of video packages and in-house commercials and so on. So this was a joy to get through.
I don't know if that's an indication, because this did air on USA at its normal time. I don't know if it's an indication that like normally these shows are basically 2-hour shows. If you cut out all the commercials, you're getting an hour of commercials. And again, that's not including video packages, these sort of like long drawn out walkouts that you could kind of blast through. So
I believe they are because after the show ended, it on my Netflix feed, I wasn't really paying attention, and it just flicked straight right back to a February edition that I must have started but not finished or something like that. Mm-hmm. And it had been edited, as they are after a little while, to take all of the ads out, and it had a runtime of 2 hours and 4 minutes. So I think that's the extent of the advertising breaks.
There you go. All right. So basically, never watch these live. Whenever we go back to the 3 hours, like you could probably start this at 9 and catch up perfectly fine. But we're talking about SmackDown from the O2 in London, again taped on Tuesday. The attendance is interesting to discuss because according to WrestleTix, the tickets out for this one was at 6,493, and that is not any sort of at least number from months ago. This was the number as of Tuesday, according to WrestleTix, and this is less than half of the number that showed up for Raw the night prior. So there was, of course, the England versus Ghana match happening at the same time, which could have very much affected anticipation, or at least people wanting to go out. It could have been the fact that they already saw wrestling on the Monday and didn't want to come back out for a Tuesday. That could have also affected it. But at least the football match was big enough to the point where WWE felt the need to advertise a live broadcast of the game after this edition of SmackDown. So technically, the main event of tonight's SmackDown was a dark match between Ghana in England.
Yeah, a really interesting side note to all of this. I picked up on that earlier this week in a new segment where the people in attendance at this show were showing the football match on the big screens if they wanted to hang around in the O2 arena to watch it. But 6K, not a great draw. You know, I guess the UK did have rather recently, you know, a good run as part of the Euro Tour, including house matches or shows. So they're not exactly starved in the way that sometimes they are for live WWE. But I think by any standard, this is not a good attendance. And yes, Way is showing some photographs, and I saw some of these myself where fans in attendance had turned their phone cameras to some of the empty seating. They, of course, shoot this for TV in a way that makes it look very well attended. I don't know whether there was any sound sweetening going on during the show. There may well have been. I certainly would have had time to add that in. But yeah, a poor attendance, it has to be said.
0-0 final score, by the way, Neal. So, yeah, I don't know. Do you know much about like? Is that a win, sort of in you know, like for Ghana in a way? What are we?
Yes,
yeah, it is.
That's a pretty poor result for poor result for England. That is.
Okay, well, sorry for anybody.
My heart is not bleeding.
No, not for you. For anybody else that might have been Davy Portman, among others.
Sure.
All right. So Trick and Yachty start things off here. I will say, like, you look at the number, you know maybe how big the O2 is. I thought they did a decent job of making this look like full enough, you know. And I can only imagine like what the other side would have looked like. You kind of see it in some of these pictures. The sort of second deck seemed completely blacked out. How do you think the crowd came across? How do you think they sounded for these segments?
They sounded pretty good. And again, there may have been some sweetening. There may have been some post, you know, making it sound louder. But it came across as pretty authentic to me, you know, and I was listening quite hard for that because I was watching this with headphones. And certainly Trick is seen as a star. He's not a mega star. He's not in the main event scene, but a good way to start the show. And certainly the crowd were up for seeing Trick Williams.
On the show, he certainly seemed to be like among the higher tier of guys getting reactions. And I mean, you know, like Paul Levesque on the Stephen A. Smith podcast, like straight up sort of lined out like who he kind of sees as like your next generation of top guys, and just Oba is among them. Trick is among them. Seems to talk about Javon Evans too, and haven't seen enough indication of maybe like his booking, but like this show essentially started with Trick, closed with Oba, and that gives you a very clear indication, at least right now, who the big ones are. And I thought like Trick got a pretty good reaction here tonight. He says he missed SmackDown last week, and that was for a good reason. He reveals that he went down to Jamaica. Yachty was there. Lash Legend was there. He is now married, which gets a good deal of response here, applause here. He says he's going to beat Saints with his lemon pepper steppers, a ring around his finger, and the U.S. title around his waist. So out comes Ricky Saints, who gets a "Who are ya?" from this crowd. He says getting married just means Trick isn't very good at making smart decisions. He tells him not to overlook him towards SummerSlam and says that the hype train for Trick is ending tomorrow. Saints ends up delivering a cheap shot to Yachty, and then he comes back in, delivers another one to Trick. So that is our go-home segment for this particular match. How do you think they did in maybe elevating your interest for this one?
Not much, I have to say. I like Trick. I love the shtick. I thought that his rundown of the wedding was fun, and you know, it wasn't quite on the level of Will Ospreay, but he did say so. She said yes, and then I whooped that Trick all night long or something like that. So that seems to be the thing for wrestlers at the moment, to talk about having sex with their wives. But honestly, from the moment Ricky came out with that awful weak-sounding theme, the "Who are you?" not a great sign. He had a good promo to sort of combat that. I'm your wife's favorite lover or whatever, you know. But he had some lines for the comeback. But I don't think Ricky is really on Trick's level just yet. And yeah, this segment didn't exactly hype me for the match.
Yeah,
at
not
Night of
at
Champions.
all. Not at all. Like I was, in fact, quite surprised that he ended up getting the shot over Mello, and I can only think it's because they want to save Mello, maybe for a bigger stage, and that kind of means Trick or Saints is kind of put out there to, well, like it's a chance for him to impress, but he's also starting from, I think, a much, much, much lower point than where Trick Williams already is. He has certainly, to me, I would even include this in NXT, yet to really find his appeal in the WWE.
Yeah.
And that's not what I would have predicted, like with him coming in here, because he felt in AEW like such a, I don't know, to me like a bit of a standout, as far as like charisma, as far as the promo goes. But in the WWE, his promos have just been, I would say, quite forgettable, and in the main roster, certainly, I think quite tame. Charismatically, especially sharing the stage with somebody like a Trick Williams here,
Yeah.
he feels generic, which is not something I would have ever said about him in AEW. So I don't exactly know what the answer is, but this is kind of almost to me putting him in on too big of a stage to fail, like at least on the microphone. And you kind of saw the result here. This segment needed to was his big at bat to try to impress us with something, and I don't think he did anything like that here.
No, I agree. And I agree with what you said about his AEW run. If you could have, at that time, if you could have handpicked anyone on the AEW roster who would have been a good fit for WWE, a lot of people would have said Ricky Starks. And even in NXT, he's not really risen to the challenge so far. Some of that has to be on him as well as the booking, which is tough to put him against Trick.
In the back, Jackie is with Alexa. Alexa gives us an update on Charlotte, who was attacked last week in the main event, of course. Alexa vows revenge on Jade and her minions. This is when Tiffany Stratton comes in, and they are teaming tonight. Reluctantly, of course, they do a thing where they're they don't want to be friends, but will team up against the common cause. Stratton tells them to leave her out of their drama after tonight. So we get our match. Tiffany Stratton and Alexa Bliss taking on Michin and B-Fab. And, on commentary, they, like Cole makes mention of Alexa calling these two Jade's minions, which, I'm sure would have raised Athena's eyebrows. But Graves would go on to correct him and say, these are not minions, these are baddies. So it seems like the term baddies is now officially attached to at least these two and their team with Jade.
I still like Beachin for these two, but anyway.
Yeah, So Bliss, so Stratton goes for a fun match, I would say, by maybe like women's tag team standards on SmackDown. It ends by Stratton going for the PME, but Jade sneaking in from under the ring, allowing B-Fab to deliver her neck breaker X Factor, which is, I think, like sort of an interesting move, kind of twisty for not that much reason, but the twists look kind of cool.
Yeah.
So B-Fab actually gets the win here. Crowd seemed to react better to Stratton here than usual, I thought. They gave her a Tiffy time chance throughout, and, Jade got a good amount of heat for the interference. What did you think about the match?
I agree with that too. I feel like even though the attendance at this show wasn't wonderful, you did get hardcore fans. That means, as well, the people in attendance were largely up for the show, and so, Tiffany got a good reaction. I thought the match itself wasn't much of a match, but it was well executed. I think B-Fab looked solid, for all the fun that has been made, about B-Fab in the past. She looked solid and improved to me. But really, this was a setup for tomorrow.
So afterwards, you had Chelsea showing up with the kendo stick, but she drops it upon entering the ring. However, she still somehow manages to send the heels out of the ring by sort of like, I don't know, like fluking her way out of it. So she's still, like, Chelsea at this point is still like booked as, I would say, somewhat of a central figure in the women's division, but she's not supposed to be credible. She's supposed to almost like, again, fluke her way into any sort of like, upper hand. So more on this a little bit later here. The MFTs are what Solo Sakoa and what maybe one of the more newsworthy segments of the evening here. So we have Solo, who is sort of excited about like talking to them about what he did to the Bloodline on Monday, and Tama instead comes in not as enthused. He says he's tired of Solo's obsession with Roman. He cost them the titles last week, Solo did, and now he's even helping LA Knight on Raw. Tala says he got word from the elders, I guess meaning Haku, and has maybe Tongaloa has graduated to become an elder at this point.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, he's moved up. So and the elders have told the Tongans that they are out. So the MFTs are no more. What a run! What is your favorite MFT moment, Neal?
There's just too many to pick from. It's probably the endless teases from Tama over about the space of a year that this would happen, and then we go from 0 to 60 in like the space of this segment. It's done. I am glad to see the end result, though. As we've been saying for several weeks, I think Solo's better on his own without these two. I don't know where it leaves Tama and Tala going forward, but if this sticks, I'm good with it.
I do wonder at what point they shifted plans for this, because it really felt like for the longest time Tama would be the one to go solo, no pun intended, and turn babyface. Now it seems very apparent that Solo is the babyface of the group. So where does it leave Tama and Tala? I would assume a tag team. Will they get as much airtime? Certainly I feel like being a tag team on SmackDown is not a great role for anybody right now. So we'll see how they follow up with all of this. Backstage, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to expect some sort of tie-in with Finn and Shinsuke, because that sort of gets mentioned a little later on as the other two, as the Tongans are leaving.
Yeah, I would recommend if you've been thinking about it, buy your MFT T-shirt right now, everybody. I know you're on the fence, Neal, so
yeah,
better get it now. I don't know how long
it's in my wish list.
Sale. All right, backstage we got Jade here, who demands a match with Chelsea tonight from Nick Aldis. Then we get for the Cruiserweight Championship, the AAA Cruiserweight Championship, Nathan Frazer taking on Fenix here. So nice to see Nathan Frazer getting a chance to wrestle in front of his countrymen here. Frazer catches Fenix with an inverted Spanish fly off the second rope, then delivers the final cut for a 2 count. Frazer then goes for a suicide dive, but Fenix moves out of the way, leading to a frog splash from Fenix for 2. Frazer then curls himself up into the corner, leading to Fenix catching him with the Mexican muscle buster for the victory. These two ended up getting a standing ovation here in what I thought was certainly the match of the night, and I would say a very excellent match by really any standard, not just WWE's.
By any standard, absolutely. Excellent match of the night. One thing about the 2-hour SmackDowns, matches like this will not get this sort of time, but I'm happy enough to make that sacrifice. Not to invite any tribalism, but matches like this are on AEW TV pretty much all the time. Just saying, but not to take away from this, it was great. There was a lot of moves where there's modifications and so on, where I'm really not sure what to put in my notes. If thankfully I don't have to do any kind of play-by-play in huge detail, but tons of pace. The big spinning Mexican muscle buster at the end. I really enjoyed this. It did just remind me of something that I should have said a couple of weeks ago, because I do the AAA reports, and it's that, and Graves mentions this, that Ray had beaten Laredo Kid and #1 contender for this title, Lince Dorado, on the previous week's edition of AAA, which is something I was aware of a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I think, at this point, where Axiom challenged for the AAA Cruiserweight Championship. And I meant to mention on that episode that he shouldn't have, because Lince Dorado had already won the #1 contendership for them. But I don't think anyone's counting. And we're into this weird world where AAA is here. Yep. We've got the AAA Cruiserweight Championship. We've got the AAA Tag Team Champions. They appear later on. And yet the storylines are just not meshing together at all.
No. Yeah, a little bit more on that later as well. So, they're using the AAA Cruiserweight Championship attached to Fenix as sort of like the new U.S. Open challenge that, certainly Zayn, Carmelo, Ilya, benefited from. Like, this is the sort of work rate match in the middle of the show. And using the Cruiserweight Championship for it, I think has been very effective for Fenix. It's like, especially delivering this style of match. It's great for people like, Axiom and Nathan Frazer as well, of course, to be able to get this showcase.
Yeah.
Stylistically, this is the type of match that, like, might even make you excited for the idea of a Cruiserweight revival in the WWE if they can actually offer this sort of consistency week to week. But, I mean, I have no faith at the success of any sort of Cruiserweight division, as we've seen time and time again over the course of the WWE's lifetime. But for the time being, with it on Fenix, I do think it's been productive. All right, let's go to in the back. Truth and Priest are there, and this is when the War Raiders come in. They remind, I guess, Priest and Truth, and they challenge them for a winner-take-all match. Speaking of AAA, they want to put their AAA tag team titles on the line against Truth and Priest WWE tag team titles. And Truth suddenly starts speaking in sort of like I want to say like a Scarface / like Razor Ramon type of accent, complete with toothpick. Because he's talking to luchadors, I guess. And, you could hear audible laughs from this English crowd. So, they appreciated it. But the War Raiders were in the unfortunate position of having to, play confused. And they've done a lot worse, these War Raiders. So maybe just getting on TV is a bit of an improvement for them. This match is happening at some point. Your thoughts on this week's hilarious segment?
Yeah, once again, the humor didn't really land with me the way it seemed to with the crowd. I do wonder if that laughter was added in post or something, or maybe these fans really.
I think this is just this appeals to British humor. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Let me educate you on it.
The Razor Ramon impression, I don't know. It didn't work for me, brother.
Yeah. Okay. So, so this has been the reintroduction of the War Raiders, which, I just don't see anything with these.
They're just hanging around trying to look mean. And one other note from this segment is that Priest at one point says, he's looking forward to moving on from the MFTs. SmackDown has so many talented tag teams. He actually says this, and I'm racking my brains. SmackDown has so
Fraxium, Los Garza,
and the War Raiders.
Consider that War Raiders. What are the other tag teams we got? The Lads are gone. Profits are gone. The DIY is gone.
Yeah. Jacy and Tongaloa have gone.
You can put Fraxium, really.
Sure.
It's just put them against Fraxium. LA Knight is showing up from Raw, and he goes to the ring because he's got something to say. And he says that he says that Jimmy Uso got what he deserved on Monday, but the actions of Solo Sakoa ended up confusing him, so he calls out Solo Sakoa. And the crowd starts doing a Seven Nation Army chant to Solo Sakoa, and that is certainly something I did not expect.
No.
So again, Neal, like maybe John and I spoke a bit about it on Monday. This felt like a very different type of like crowd for London than maybe we have come to expect from a London crowd. Like they are. Well, I mean, they react really well to Solo Sikoa. They react really well to Tiffany Stratton. They react well to certain people, maybe less so to even some of your hometown guys. Like, I don't think a Nathan Frazer got anything in particular. Paige, didn't, to me, get anything outstanding in terms of reaction here. But Solo Sikoa gets his own, Seven Nation Army chant here. Any thoughts on any of that?
I did find it slightly odd. Phoenix was getting the chance against Nathan Frazer in their match as it went along. They were quite quiet at the beginning, but it was the quality of that match that really got the crowd going. Maybe they're just a step ahead. They can see the Solo is going babyface, and they want to show what smart marks they are.
They picked a good crowd to do a Solo turn tonight here. So Solo says he's not here to fight LA Knight. He says everybody in his family has left him. Knight says his heart doesn't pump purple piss for him. And he thinks he's going right back to the bloodline. Solo at this point gets really heated. He says he hates that damn family. He hates Roman. He hates Jacob. He hates the Usos. And he says he and Knight have that in common. Knight says you should hate them, but so should the Usos. And now main event Jay is baggage handler Jay instead. Solo says it's different now. He has nothing to lose. They can work together and watch each other's back to take out the bloodline. Knight agrees that he is outnumbered and probably should take the help, but says no thanks. He's going to live and die depending on himself. So he walks out of there. Solo sort of ends the segment all sad and disappointed. So
Yeah.
I mean, maybe wrestling booking would tell you that they are building towards an actual team up between the two. Do you have any thoughts? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's the journey we're headed on here. I expect it'll be a fairly slow one, but yeah, I think these two in the end sort of make some sort of pact
So
together.
what is our
Bloodline.
what is our end result? What's our end match in all of this between the bloodline and what?
Along the way, I could certainly see Jimmy and Jay and these two in a tag team. I don't know how you build a credible faction to take on the entire bloodline, including Roman. If Roman hangs around after SummerSlam, he may well, take advantage of his part-time schedule and take off at that point. Who knows? I'm not sure who else you add to this if these two sort of tie up.
I feel like they would need quite the top guy to really like make any sort of like faction war between the bloodline and LA Knight and Solo Sakoa feel balanced, right? Like
Yeah, oh, absolutely. That's why I could certainly see these two and the Usos, but once you factor in Jacob and Roman, it's a completely different ballgame, and you need to add more top players. So, certainly, I don't see a War Games just yet.
no. Yeah, I'm and the idea of Knight and Solo pairing up together is fascinating, like kind of fascinating to me, and also just like confusing to me because I wouldn't have predicted any sort of meshing of like maybe personality or chemistry between the two, but we are talking about a very different Solo Sokoa than what we were initially introduced to. So I'm kind of curious to see if maybe in these sort of backstage segments they might have anything unique about the two of them. So anyway, we shall see what happens there. Sammy is in the back with Byron Saxton. Sammy says good things happen to good people, and that is why he is getting a title shot. He says he hasn't been fully himself, and it started with his Rumble title loss or title failure at Saudi earlier this year. And so he says he now has a chance to redeem himself. And he looks shocked at the idea that he could redeem himself and be WWE champion. So I guess sort of getting a crazed look on his face, realizing that he's actually very close to his dream. And yeah.
Yeah, I like the fact that Sammy hasn't even given this a single thought. In a week, they all go to sleep for in between TV episodes.
I'm just so curious about like the week of Johnny Gargano's and Candice LeRae, because she was also here as well. But just like, how does he warm up for this? If any, like what does he go into makeup prior to doing this? Like what sort of prep, if any? Like what time? What does he arrive for call time? Like what does he do all day?
I think the culture is that they have to. It's amazing that they brought Johnny and Candice all the way to London for him to lie in his front and for Candice to say nothing, just to stand there.
And this does not really appear to be like leading to anything. Like maybe in its initial weeks, it felt like there was something brewing that we would sort of get some sort of culmination for. This has now just been, I mean, flat, pun intended. It's just,
it felt, it felt a little bit as though Sammy was getting some life out of Johnny. He would get at least, a head turn or some sort of motion out of him, and that might be some direction that they might go in. I don't know. I still just wonder if this is just Gargano treading water until he can leave the company.
I mean, I thought about that from day one. Like, are they just icing him, from doing anything? Like, but then why even put him on TV? I suppose.
Yeah.
Anyway, strange. Maybe it's leading to something. Maybe it's a WrestleMania level build that they're setting up with all this. So we got here Paige versus Jacy Jayne here in London, and I would say a good reaction for Paige. Nothing to me again that as big as maybe like you would think of when you think of like Paige like making her first TV appearances in London. Jayne delivers at the end here a backslide. She tries to use the ropes for leverage, but Brie knocks her legs off. Outside, the rest of the group attack Brie. This distracts Paige for a near fall. Paige ends up rolling Jade up, and the camera doesn't exactly catch it, nor do the announcers really mention it, but she does grab onto Jacy Jayne's tights, holds onto them for the win. So, again, against heels that WWE seemingly wants to protect, they will have Brie and Paige cheat to win. So, yeah.
I'd like to have had this drawn attention to much more, though. Well, first of all, you said last week, you were fairly keen to see Paige wrestle in a singles match. And I think she was very solid in this one.
Yeah.
For the sort of style that they had. It looked clean to me. But I'm not loving this run of defeats for Fatal Influence when they have heel tactics and a numbers advantage on their side. So I get giving Paige the win in England, but I don't love Jacy Jayne eating the pin, and particularly when it looked at first glance a fairly clean win, even though we can see from the still it wasn't, and that wasn't really drawn attention to enough for my liking.
Certainly up to the commentators to point out the cheating victory, and maybe they'll do a segment next week or Jayne will complain. But I agree with you. Like, once Fatal Influence arrived, especially with Jacy Jayne, I think they were strong enough to really portray as top acts right away.
Yeah.
That momentum has sort of been lost. And again, I kind of ask, in service of what? A Paige and Brie tag title run that I certainly don't really see that much reward from, not even in front of a London crowd. Like, again, nice, but it wasn't even like that big of a heartwarming moment to like see Paige here. So she looked decent in ring, but because I think of like, I don't know, the lack of like atmosphere for this particular show, even on Monday, it just ended up feeling like a pretty average thing. Nothing all that memorable by the end of the show.
You got a few "this is your house" chants, but even this sounded kind of weak. Yeah, I agree with you.
So we got Danhausen here, who has the sort of Kit Wilson and Miz zombies in the back hooked up to the machine. Miz does a hoorah, so telling us that I guess he's still doing his old catchphrases. And Matt Cardona then comes in telling Danhausen that he has a sudden urge to move back to Long Island and woo ever since he's been shocked. And all of a sudden, this is when Miz and Kit Wilson disappear. Now, Los Garza are still after Danhausen, and more on all this later. What do you think of tonight?
I didn't mind the backstage thing. I think what we get began to grate on me a little bit as this storyline continued later on. I do quite enjoy Miz and Kit with this sort of Bride of Frankenstein streak of white hair that you're showing at the moment way. But I just think they took this a little too far on this episode as SmackDown rolls on later.
This is the best thing on SmackDown, Neal. Okay, so you know what? They can spend the whole 2 hours on this next week.
Also, another example of AAA not bleeding into SmackDown storyline wise, because Los Garzas are just the normal. They are not Los Perros del Mal here at all. They're just in their gear, being wanting their money from Freakhausen.
Now this is different from NXT, where they actually took the time to address and talk about Bronco Nima and Carmen Petrovich's appearances on AAA. On SmackDown, granted, taped Tuesday, but so what? Like, yeah, in SmackDown they were basically recognizing Los Garza as completely separated from what we saw on Saturday. So, and this was like Corey Graves as well.
With Graves,
so,
yeah.
Graves would have mentioned it. You know that he would have, but I'm assuming they might have instructed him not to. And to be honest, like given what the segment actually was, they might be better off for not combining the two whatsoever.
Yeah, it would have taken a bit of explanation as to like what the whole thing was. Even on AAA, I mean, you didn't get much of an explanation of who the faction were, any of their history. You just got Rey Mysterio going, "Oh my," or, it's kind of, "Oh no," more tomorrow night, I guess.
So more with Danhausen later, but first we go to the back where Finn Balor meets up with Tama Tonga, and Balor says, "This is the Tama that I used to run with, somebody who makes his own decisions." Tama says, "That was a long time ago." He says, "I used to run with Shinsuke Nakamura too, and you saw how that went." So, what does he mean by that? Like what? Like that the fact that like Nakamura's been off TV for months, so stay away from me, Finn. You don't want to vanish just like Nakamura has.
All I took from this is some sort of tease that.
Are we getting yet another Bullet Club revival, Neal? Okay,
I hope not. I think first stop is probably Tama and Tala against who they mentioned here.
They are
Shinsuke and Finn.
They're definitely going to make Tala Tonga the new Bad Luck Fale. Okay, and Gallows and Anderson are always available to jump in.
Oh, we'll get a return to the OC then in WWE's.
No, this is the new club. All right. Yeah. Anyway, so yes, a bit more on this. They know each other from Japan, so let's see how that will unfold. Danhausen and The Miz, the reason why we are here for this particular review here. Danhausen has replaced The Miz on Miz TV. It's now Danhausen TV, and Miz and Wilson can only say their catchphrases as they stumble around the ring like zombies. So this is when Los Garza arrive. They start beating up Miz and Wilson. This is when Matt Cardona comes out to make the save. So like the shocks have affected these guys in various ways. I mean, like Miz and Wilson are just completely shocked into, this state where they're only repeating catchphrases. Zack Ryder was, I guess, only shocked a little bit because he has the urge to revert back to his Zack Ryder character, but is still in control of himself.
Exactly, yeah. Kit and Miz are totally zombified and catatonic from this. Like on the entrance, they're walking in to the post and stuff, and Danhausen has to guide them into the ring. Matt seems to be much more resilient to the shock. He's just seems to have a strange urge to want to woo and do the Rough Rider and stuff.
Now, of course, they're teasing some sort of return to, I guess, the Zack Ryder incarnation. Like, this is our latest R-Truth, where, like, our latest attempt to push this guy as a serious person has completely failed. Not that they gave him much of a shot to begin with. They're just jobbing him out, basically. But they're bringing him back to being Zack Ryder at some point. But, did you see much of that, sort of, even in the body of this match, outside of, like, your typical Matt Cardona match?
Only a little. When he was doing the sort of Zack stuff, they called attention to it.
Which is what's different that he doesn't do as Matt Cardona? He does the broski boot.
The broski boot wooing, I guess.
So did he threw in a few extra woos? That's how we're supposed to recognize
I suppose so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we got the match here. Los Garza and Danhausen versus Los Garza versus Danhausen and Matt Cardona. So Danhausen gets a big hot tag. Angel is distracted by The Miz and Wilson as zombies. And this allows Zack Ryder to deliver the Rough Rider. I'm just calling him Zack Ryder. He's delivering the Rough Rider on the outside. Berto is on the turnbuckle. Danhausen curses him as fireworks explode. Of course, this is sort of his finisher. He curses somebody and fireworks explode. And this allows Danhausen to hit his inverted DDT for a victory here for Danhausen. Your thoughts on the segment and match?
This was a bit much for me. As you know, week after week, I do quite enjoy Danhausen. I like the pairing with The Miz and Kit Wilson because they're just sort of perfect comedy characters for all of this nonsense. but we're still no clearer on what's under the sheet. And when it gets to in the ring for what, good house show fodder, kids would love it. Perfect for the Danhausen character, I guess. But this just tested my patience a little bit.
I definitely feel like this was the type of segment that, like, I wonder if this would have existed if this wasn't a number one, a 3-hour show, number two, a taped show. Like, this felt like one of those segments that I don't know, they would just kind of throw out there on a non-serious edition of SmackDown. I as far as like the clone goes, I mean, that at this point seems to be set up for something like on a bigger show, and that could be SummerSlam, could be this MSG show where, I mean, he will probably receive a very strong reaction just given all that they've done to attach him to the Knicks, right? So I don't know, who could it be?
Baron Corbin. That's been rumored.
Boy, would that be a disappointment.
Tom Pestock. Who knows?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's
be
go.
Worth the wait. That'd be worth the wait, wouldn't it?
You know what? It would be very much a Danhausen thing. If it was a Baron Corbin under the sheets there. Byron Saxton is with Gunther in the back. Saxton reminds Gunther that his record against Cody is not good at all, and this makes Gunther mad. Says he will have something to say to Cody tonight. Jade versus Chelsea is our matchup next. Jade essentially just wins using a big boot, and Jade, this was not much of a match here. So, like I said, they're still like in the midst of this like Chelsea push, you could say. She's certainly a babyface, full-on babyface by this point, but she's still sort of being portrayed as somebody who's a weak competitor, and that's sort of exemplified by a match like this where she pretty much just kind of lost. Jade wasn't even sweating here. So do you have much to say about the match itself?
Bad match though. As brief as it was, very stilted, bad selling, as so much as there was any, but some pretty bad timing. Very weakly sold snapmare by Jade. It was clunky. It was bad, but it was very brief.
Yeah. I'll say with Chelsea, I mean, she's over not because of her wrestling. She's over because of her personality, and the crowd still seem to really favor her. But I do think like portraying her as any sort of credible competitor will be tough, because I just don't think she has the skill to back that up in ring. Like if you're booking her on the level of even certainly like a Tiffany Stratton or like I don't know, Alexa Bliss even. Yeah. It's hard to buy her as a credible competitor, because I don't think she's that good. At least like not at that style of wrestling. She's great at other styles of wrestling, but I have not seen it yet from her here.
And the thing is, neither is Jade, but Jade has the look and the stature and the aura, all of that going for her. So, they can work around that.
So afterward, Jade continues the beat down here, and this is when Bliss and Stratton come out for the save to return the favor. And we get a big brawl with the baddies, leaving Tiffany Stratton laid out here from Jaded in the end. So that is our build to the match tomorrow night, and maybe some sort of tease of a little faction brewing here between Stratton, Alexa, and Chelsea. Yeah. Okay, let's go to Solo Sakoa, who's in the back with Byron Saxton. Byron Saxton says, "Man, this Byron Saxton is a real sort of a
real dick,
shit disturber here." He says, "You're all alone now, Solo Sakoa," and this is when Royce Keys shows up. And Royce says, "Jacob is coming for you, Solo." So Solo asks, "Are you going to help me?" And Royce just says, "Good luck." So, I mean, Solo kind of has it coming. He's been nice to Royce really this whole time. But yeah, Royce Keys is somebody who would join their faction.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Now that you saw it, and now that I remember this segment, that seems a place to slot Royce.
But even
with the LA Knight and Solo.
But even that's not enough. Like, they would need Punk. They would need somebody to really sway the crowd towards them as a babyface faction. Because the Bloodline are going to get massive babyface reactions against a team of LA Knight, Solo Sikoa, and Royce Keys. The star power just isn't enough.
No, they need a main eventer.
Yeah. Okay, so we got Jackie, who's with Trick and Yachty in the back. Yachty cuts a promo, says only a sucker would sucker punch a man. And Yachty kind of trips by the end of this as Trick comes in to carry on the promo. I don't know if this was intentional to sound out of breath or something, but yep, so that was that. Trick says he's smarter, prettier, and something else than Saints, and tomorrow is going to be his night. So yeah, there's that.
Smoother, I think, was one of the other.
Smoother, yeah. Giulia versus Kiana James, our big blow off to this long storied team finally here in London, which is one of 3 hometowns for Giulia, as we have come to realize. James catches the Arrivederci knee and delivers a powerbomb for 2. James goes up top with the fireman's carry. Giulia turns it into a sunset bomb. Giulia then delivers the knee, hits the Akira Hokuto Northern Lights bomb for the victory here to close their chapter of their story.
Yeah, this didn't have the feel to me of the big blow-off that it possibly should have been. And I thought the match at times was a bit more basic than I thought these two are capable of. But it was fine. And I really don't have much more to say about it.
Yeah, I don't know what sort of crowd reaction they were expecting from London after, Giulia's promo mentioning that she was born here, but it wasn't really anything out of the ordinary.
No.
Like she didn't get a bad reaction. They were certainly on her side, but it wasn't anything special either. And again, this has not necessarily been a feud that it's not been a pairing that's received that much fanfare, and therefore it almost felt like they're doing this. They had to do this match just to be able to say they closed it.
Yeah.
The real feud here is now being teased as Blake Monroe makes her main roster debut, attacking Giulia from behind. So Blake Monroe has finally returned. You can't really even say debut because she already made her debut. So I like it. I like this as a first program for Blake Monroe, and I would even say Giulia as a babyface here. So of course you could do the whole "I know you from Japan" thing, and this is also a chance for Monroe to be able to handle the bulk of the talking here, and we shall see if Giulia can sort of play at this point what I'm sensing to be more of an Io Sky type of babyface against her.
Yeah, and Blake is such a sort of OTT heel that it's a good dynamic here to babyface Giulia and sort of cement her place as a good guy in this feud. So I like this too, and it's time. It's actually after time since we to get Blake Monroe up here. I thought the crowd were actually fairly nondescript in their reaction though to this sneak attack. There was no great sort of, oh my God, sort of, it's Blake Monroe reaction from the crowd for the sneak attack.
Yeah, I like it as a first program, but I mean, you are kind of dealing with 2 relatively new projects, and I would include Giulia in that because she really has yet to be established as a babyface. The other options would have been to pair Blake Monroe with somebody like a Charlotte, like people that are established veterans. Instead, you're now putting these 2 relative newcomers together, and that might represent a bit of a challenge in certain towns. But again, I think the storytelling, in the depth, could be there, right, for the both of them. So we'll see how they handle that. Cody Rhodes comes out for our main event segment, and he is, of course, quickly interrupted by Sami Zayn, who shouts out his ride or die fans, although here in London he's met with mostly boos this time. Sami says he regrets how last week went down. He's the last real good guy, so he regrets the refereeing and knocking Cody out with the world title. Zayn says this is not how he wanted it. You guys asked me to be a ref here. And Cody calls this bullshit. This is exactly what you wanted, Sami. You're fighting for the title in a country where you're beloved, and you don't even have to pin me to become champion. He says you're not a victim. You're exhausting. You're like a mosquito sucking blood from me. Cody can't understand how Sami Zayn is best friends with Kevin Owens because Owens would stab him in the front instead of the back, and Owens has actually been WWE champion. So again, that is Sami Zayn's sore spot here. Zayn tells Cody to keep Owens' name out of his mouth, which has to tease pending return. Wouldn't you say, Neal?
I think so too. I don't think KO gets the mention like this unless they've got something in mind for him. Yeah.
Well, that something in mind is the Great American Bash barbecue. All right, so maybe that's what this is all leading up to. Yeah. I mean, I would hope this means that he could be healthy in time, and you wonder if that time might even be SummerSlam. Again, I don't really know prognosis for the injury, but hope it's soon.
Yeah.
So this is when Sammy says, if you want to go low, he says, if it wasn't for me, Gunther would be champion. So you should be thanking me instead of chastising me. I'm also the reason you won't be champion, though, after Night of Champions. And this is when Gunther appears. Gunther does not care for any of this drama. He says Sammy is right when he said that he should be champion after last week. But he says Sammy is also a non-factor to him as a wrestler because he will never be a world champion. Gunther says he's going to SummerSlam facing the King of the Ring, not Cody, and this prompts Jey Uso to walk out. And London is demanding an encore, but Gunther does cut it off. Jay does a sort of like your quick burst warning shot lines at all the men in the ring, reminding Gunther about having him out like a little bitch. This prompts Gunther to attack, and a big fight ensues. And they sort of do like a number of like pairings, just to kind of like indicate to the crowd that this could be your SummerSlam main event. So they do the whole thing with Cody being in the ring with Jay. The lights go out, and out comes Oba Femi. Jay uses the distraction to super kick Cody, leaving Jay and Oba with a stare down. Can you see Oba Femi versus Jey Uso as our SummerSlam main event?
Absolutely not. I'm not putting any money down on that.
Neither can this crowd. I don't think they really bought that one. Gunther attacks Jay, leaving Oba and Gunther with the stare down. What about that one, Neal?
Interesting. Yeah, and maybe somewhere down the line, but I don't see it in the immediate future, just given the sort of booking path towards SummerSlam.
Yeah. Then Cody hits the cross, then Sammy decks Gunther with the belt, leaving Sammy and Oba. That's got to be more believable, right?
Yeah.
Double heel, SummerSlam main event, Sami Zayn versus Oba Femi. Then we got the crossroads from Cody to Sami Zayn, leaving Cody and Oba to share a moment, which can you buy? What about this one? I want to get your temperature for all of these matchups.
This I can buy, of course, yeah, and it's a possible through line of the finish to the King of the Ring tournament. It's not what I hope and think might happen, though. Maybe we'll get to that in the.
I think if they were going to do any of this, they shouldn't have had Oba do the informal poll on Monday, which like really lead the crowd's favor towards Roman Reigns versus Oba Femi, right? And whatever, it's fine. This is the Paul Levesque special, throwing out a bunch of your misdirects there to kind of make you guess the outcome of these matches. But I don't think anybody's buying Oba versus anybody but Reigns coming off of this.
Agreed.
However, the outcome of like the title match with Cody is definitely a little bit tougher to predict, isn't it?
I think so too. Yeah, and we'll get to that for the patrons, but when we do the predictions, but I do feel that it was very in your face that both Cody and Gunther were given the, you have never been, at least Kevin Owens has won the WWE Championship, and Gunther then saying you have never won the world title and you never will, and I think that's sort of, wrestling logic makes you think what,
yes,
where that might go, particularly in a triple threat match where there's all sorts of shenanigans can happen. There's no disqualifications. Cody doesn't need to be pinned, etc.
Yeah. Yeah, so again, as Neal mentioned, we will be previewing, giving our predictions for Night of Champions in the Post Wrestling Cafe after this. But first, your thoughts overall on tonight's edition of SmackDown?
Pretty skippable, I've got to say. The closing segment, if you were interested and you're going to watch Night of Champions, it's kind of a decent setup. I still really enjoy Sami and Cody, particularly. But overall, these months, I've not got tired of these two and the dynamic between them. But yeah, a lame duck episode of SmackDown, like you said at the top of the show, and I think it's hard to argue with that.
The news items being the MFTs breakup and Blake Monroe's debut, both of which you can probably just, catch clips online if you were that curious about. I thought like Frazer and Fenix had a really strong match, so if you wanted to just like grab the good wrestling from the show, it really was just that. I thought like considering, it being half the size, I thought the crowd sounded passable. And yes, maybe this being a tape show, there might have been some sort of adjustment for it, but they came across fine on TV. But as far as London crowds go, we are very far from perhaps like our standard expectations of like what these special UK crowds would have been otherwise. So we'll see if that continues. All right, over to the Post Wrestling Cafe we go. But before that, want to remind everybody, John and I will be back both nights this particular weekend with our Night of Champions review. We are actually going to be live at youtube.com/postwrestling at 9 p.m. Eastern time. So the show is taking place at 1 p.m. Eastern time. Watch it, digest it, go about your day, enjoy, have dinner. Come back at 9 p.m. Eastern time to listen to John and I talk about it, or listen to it in your podcast feeds anytime, sometime in the evening. And then on Sunday, I should say Monday morning, really.
It's going to be Monday.
Yeah, Forbidden Door. That's going to be, a pretty long one. We're expecting probably to go live. I'm guessing beyond midnight for that one. So join us then. We will be live for all of it at youtube.com/postwrestling. And with all that said, let's go over to the Post Wrestling Cafe for your feedback and our Night of Champions preview.